You know the feeling, you walk past the piano and a familiar wave of guilt washes over you. It's been a long day, your motivation is at zero and it feels like another practice session is about to be added to the didn't do it list. We've all been there. You know you should practice, but turning that should into want to feels like an impossible jump. And the guilt just makes it worse, and the longer you avoid the piano, the harder it is to come back. But what if I told you that these zero motivation days could actually become some of your most productive and even fun sessions? What if the secret wasn't about forcing yourself through an hour of drills, but about tricking your brain into actually wanting to play? In this video, I'm sharing 7 simple mindset shifts that will get you playing even when you'd rather do anything else. And these aren't about hardcore discipline, they're about psychology and finding joy in the process again. And trust me, the last one is so simple you'll be using it for everything you do. I've had weeks, even months, where the last thing I wanted to do was practice, so believe me, I get it. It's a totally normal part of the journey. The real difference between the pianists who keep getting better and those who quit is just having a few strategies like these ready to go. So if you've ever felt that frustration and you want to keep your passion for music alive, stick around because we're about to turn that dread into progress. Okay, first up, the easiest way to get yourself to the piano when you have absolutely no motivation is to lower the bar so low it's ridiculous to say no. You know, maybe your normal practice routine is an hour-long session that includes scales and sight reading and memorization and lots of hard stuff. And today you're not feeling it, so you're tempted to do nothing at all. What if you tell yourself that you're only going to sit down and play something easy, something you love? Go back to a simple piece you've already mastered, or just mess around with some beautiful sounding chords. Don't even think about tackling that brutal passage you've been fighting with. The goal isn't to make huge leaps, it's just to touch the keys and make a sound that makes you happy. And more often than not, you'll find that once you start, you'll get curious about how that tricky section you worked on yesterday sounds today. Or you'll just play a quick scale or two just for the feeling of running your fingers over the keys. Because you've already conquered the hardest part, just starting. By making it almost too easy to begin, you trick your brain into getting back into the zone. And if it happens to be a day when you don't do anything you're supposed to, well, that's okay as well. Sometimes just messing around on the keys without any outcome in mind is exactly what you need to be doing. Which brings me actually to my next point. So, number 2 is to think process, not outcome. It's very useful, of course, to set yourself goals. Maybe you want to learn a particular piece in time for a family get-together, or you're preparing for an exam or recital, but just having a goal will get you nowhere if you don't know what the process is to get you there. So what do you need to do every day to ensure that the last few days before your performance aren't a stress-ridden marathon panic practice session? Use your goal to help you decide your process and then focus entirely on sticking to the process. This one comes with a dose of tough love because the truth is you're not always going to feel motivated to practice. That's normal. Practice can sometimes be a tedious affair. Remind yourself of what your goal is, imagine how good it's going to feel to achieve it, and then get down to the process. At the same time, once you do sit down to practice, try not to get too hung up on the end result. You might have set a high standard for your ultimate goal, but today's contribution to that doesn't require perfection. It just requires that you show up and aim for a tiny improvement. 1% will do it. James Clear of Atomic Habits fame says that a 1% improvement every day works out to you being 37 times better after a year. That sounds good to me. And by the way, if you think your lack of motivation might be coming from a more serious problem like deep frustration at a lack of progress or losing interest because you don't think you have what it takes to learn piano, please jump down to the description and look for the link to my free training called the Piano Practice Gap, 3 Secrets to 10x Your Progress, because I have some really important things to share with you in that. They're just too detailed to cover here. Anyway, let's move on to number 3. Tip number 3 is a really important one, and it's to try and figure out the emotion behind your reluctance to practice. Very often when you say to yourself, oh, I'm just not in the mood for piano today, you're unconsciously masking a more uncomfortable feeling about your practice. And if you can face that head on, you might find yourself back in the driver's seat and able to tackle hard things much more easily. There are probably only a couple of emotions behind your not wanting to practice. They can be really powerful though if not confronted, so let's see how we might do that. The first one is usually fear. You may be working on a challenging piece, possibly too challenging for the level you're at, and every time you sit down to work at it, it fights back. It might just be a couple of spots that you just can't seem to master, or you can't get it past a certain tempo, but over time your confidence has taken a hit, and now understandably you'd literally rather do anything else in the world than go back to practicing it. And if this is the case, then the best approach is to break the problem down into the smallest, simplest parts and tackle them one at a time. So for example, if you can only play the piece at 80 beats a minute and it needs to be 120, don't try to get it to the full tempo today, just aim for 85 or even 83 beats a minute. If there's a couple of spots that seem impossible, see if you can reduce the problem to its simplest form, and sometimes just getting this clarity is enough to untangle it. So maybe there's a tricky rhythm happening simultaneously with a difficult jump, so work on them one at a time before combining them. Fear often evaporates when we understand the problem, so that's your first step. The other big emotion that stops us from practicing is overwhelm, and it's very similar to fear in that it comes from not being able to get a clear picture of what we need to do, in this case because we've got too many options. I often get asked about the best way to structure a practice session that includes, sight reading, all your scales, technical exercises, musical theory, several pieces. And my answer is usually that you really don't need to do everything every day. Pick a couple of scales and one piece maybe. Do a few minutes of sight reading, not a whole book. Technical exercises a couple of times a week. If you cover all your bases over the course of a week, you're doing great, trust me. Often the desire to overdo it comes from wanting to make faster progress, but if you burn yourself out, there'll be no progress at all, so try to pace yourself. Sometimes though, we can feel overwhelmed even without trying to do all the things, so it's worth considering what might be at the root of that. Are you working on material that's too advanced? Maybe this can happen if we move up through the levels too quickly, so you might be better off dropping back down a grade or two until you've really mastered the skills needed there. In the long run, you'll reach higher levels faster and more easily if you take your time about getting there. You might also have a particular skill deficit that's making everything seem overwhelming, so be honest with yourself and see if you need to do some remedial work on things like rhythm or note reading or coordination. A few practice sessions devoted to those will feel much more doable and ultimately productive than trying to plough on through music that you're feeling overwhelmed by. By the way, if these ideas are hitting home for you, please do me a quick favour and hit that like button. It's a small click for you, but it makes a huge difference in helping this video reach other piano players who might be feeling the exact same way, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, let's keep going. Okay, we've understood our feelings around practice and we've tried lowering the bar, but what if even a 5-minute session feels like too much? What if the piece you're working on is so infuriating you can't even look at it? That brings us to tip number 4, which is to embrace micro practice. I want you to promise yourself that you'll improve just half a bar of music. Seriously, that's it. Maybe it's just 2 notes. Find the single most annoying spot on your piece, that one place you always stumble or hesitate, and laser focus on it. Your goal isn't to learn the whole page or even a whole line, it's to take one tiny impossible feeling problem and make it just 1% better. Break it down, play it painfully slowly, practice just the left hand, then just the right. This method of breaking music into tiny, doable chunks is foundation of smart practice. The psychological win you get from this is huge. Instead of ending your day feeling beaten by a page of music, you can walk away knowing that you've solved one specific puzzle. You took a broken part and you fixed it. And that small victory can unleash a surprising wave of motivation. And often once you've conquered that one tiny section, you'll feel back in control and maybe you'll feel inspired to tackle the next half bar. The next one is a little psychological hack that works like magic on a procrastinating brain. Set a timer for 10 minutes and make a deal with yourself. I'll practice with focus for these 10 minutes, and when the timer goes off, I can get up guilt-free and go do something else. This works because it creates a clear, contained window of work. It reduces the resistance we feel when faced with an open-ended task. The end is always just a few minutes away. It's not some endless hour-long practice session, it's just 10 minutes. And just like when we lower the bar, something funny tends to happen. Once you're 10 minutes in and the alarm goes off, quite often you'll find yourself in the zone. You've broken through the initial friction, you've engaged with the music, and suddenly you want to do just a little bit more and just a little bit more until you end up doing a full session after all. But even if you do stop, you've still won. You're not actually trying to fool yourself into doing a full session. You practiced for 10 minutes on a day that you were going to practice for 0, and that's a huge victory for consistency, and consistency is what builds skill over the long run. Number 6 feels like a total cheat, but is actually a legitimate and incredibly effective form of practice. It's to practice by listening instead of playing. On days when you just don't have the physical or mental energy to play, you can still have a productive session without ever touching the piano. Find a few professional recordings of the piece that you're working on, put on some good headphones and just listen. But this isn't passive listening while you scroll on your phone, this is active listening. Get your sheet music and follow along. Pay close attention to the dynamics, the rhythmic patterns, how does the pianist shape the phrases, where do they speed up or slow down, what feelings are they communicating. You're doing deep musical study, you're absorbing the language and structure of the piece, and that will absolutely inform your own playing when you come back to the piano. I often find that seeing the music I'm working on performed at its best reignites my own passion for it, and it gets me excited again about practicing it. So listening helps keep you connected to your music and your goals even on a day off. Think of it as filling up your creative well so that when you're ready to play again, you have a clearer, more inspired vision of what you want to create. And finally, we're at tip number 7. This is the simplest one, but it might just be the most powerful mindset shift of them all. On a day you don't feel like practicing, think of your future self. I want you to close your eyes, picture yourself a year from now. Imagine that future you is sitting at the piano, playing a piece that present you only dreams of playing. And they're playing it confidently and with total ease because of the small, consistent efforts you're making right now. Every single practice session, no matter how short or messy, is a gift that you're giving to that future version of yourself. That 5-minute session where you just played some chords, that 10-minute session where you fixed half a bar, a gift to future you. You're literally building skills that future you will use effortlessly. Keeping your long-term goals in sight is a proven way to stay motivated. When you frame today's practice not as a chore but as an act of kindness for the pianist you want to become, it changes everything. It connects your small daily actions to a much bigger, more meaningful purpose. So when you don't have the motivation, don't do it for the tired, guilty version of you today. Do it for the amazing piano playing version of you tomorrow. Future you will be very grateful to present you. So there you have it, 7 ways to get yourself to the piano even when you feel completely unmotivated. To recap, lower the bar, focus on process not perfection, tackle the emotion behind the reluctance, micro practice one tough spot, use your 10-minute timer, practice with active listening, and frame it as a gift to your future self. Remember, the goal isn't to be a perfect practice robot, it's to build a sustainable lifetime relationship with music. Your motivation will come and go, that's a guarantee, but having these tools means that a bad day doesn't have to be a zero progress day. It's not about forcing it, it's about being kind to yourself and finding a creative way to keep showing up. Every moment you spend with your instrument is a step forward, no matter how small it feels. And it's a marathon, not a sprint, so just keep moving, one note at a time. So now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these tips resonated with you the most? Or do you have your own secret weapon for practicing on a low motivation day? Share it in the comments below, because your idea might be the one thing that helps somebody else to get back to the piano bench. And if you want more tips on smart practice, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching and happy practicing.